Your first session with your client is one of the most important hours you'll have with them. You mess this up and you might get a refund request, but if you do this right, you can potentially get your first long-term client. If you're new to this channel, my name is Coach Royce. I've been a personal trainer for nearly 2 decades. I own 2 gyms here in Las Vegas, and over the years, I've seen trainers have amazing first client workouts, and I've also seen and I've been part of some nightmare first training sessions as well. And in this video, I'm gonna show you guys a simple framework you guys can follow so you can run a smooth first session. Part 1 is you wanna make sure you first have a basic outline structure of what your hour looks like. Now, there are going to be a lot of different structures for a lot of personal trainers, but for me and my team, this is the structure that we use so we can run a smooth, effective first client workout. And the 5 parts are warm up. The second part is activation. The third part is skill teaching or skill learning. The next one is conditioning. And then the final piece to this is going to be your cool down. Once you have your established framework for what the workout will look like, we can really start to pepper in the key ingredients that's going to allow you to build trust with your clients, build confidence with your clients, and hopefully build a long-lasting program with them so you don't have to go out there and keep finding new clients, which is very expensive, by the way. So once you have that key structure, the 3 big things that we want to grab inside that structure is 1, we want to find places where we can assess. And I like to assess because in the past, I would just kind of guess and I would create movements that I can do without really even doing an assessment on them. So there are going to be a lot of movements in the warm up, in some of their activation, and in the skill teaching that's going to allow me to pull some details of what my client can and can't do in front of me. So the next thing is I want to try to foster an experience where it's positive. And when I say positive, I want it to feel like they are winning and they're not wiped out, like they're not just rolling on the ground on their first session. I think that is one of the biggest ways you can lose your clients almost immediately, especially if they're deconditioned. Now, there are possibly some cases where some clients like that, but over the 20 years, I find that method to be ineffective. It might work for me if you were trying to get me as a client, but most of your clients are going to be brand new and oftentimes trying to lose weight. And the last thing you want them to do is to completely kill them. So you want them to feel like they're getting a win and they're not getting a wipeout. The next thing here is essentially you're talking over a plan. You want to make sure you show them the road and just plan for the next mile. I've done in the past where I planned like the whole 12 weeks. However, I find that every client is going to be a little bit different. And there are going to be some that have perfect scenario where there's no stresses throughout the program. And then you're going to have some clients that are seasonally have high stress. So having 12-week programs already planned out can be detrimental to you. While it's going to be a good idea that you have some framework, however, I just kind of just show them what the next week would look like and just keep them present. I think a lot of times people can feel overwhelmed when you just show the whole year or the whole 90 days, just little pieces at a time, and then you will adapt. Have a big plan in place, but be flexible to change the plan, assuming your client is a human being. They have different needs and they'll have different problems. So do yourself a favor. I think you're going to save a lot of energy doing it that way. And you're going to have a much more exciting experience with them because you're not abiding by exactly what your paper says. And that's the whole personal side of this anyways. You're personalizing things based on what's happening in their personal lives. In this video, I'm also going to give you my theoretical timeline so you get an understanding how long warm-ups are, how long cooldowns are, how long should I be teaching. For those of you guys that love numbers and find certainty and safeness around these numbers, I'll include it, but it can vary for the most part. Now, the first part to this is going to be your warm-up, and the warm-up is probably going to take somewhere around 5 minutes or so. And there's really 3 critical components that I want to include in these warm-ups. Number 1, I want it to be simple and easy to demo. The second thing is I want to make sure their body temperature up is higher than how they came in. And the final piece to this is I'm trying to improve their flexibility. I'm trying to improve their range of motion to at least suit the movements that I'm about to teach. And I say simple to demo because if you find yourself teaching the warm-up, I think it's a little bit too complex at the start. So an example can just be like walking high knees, leg swings. I mean, you can teach things like spider crawls and other things like that. However, I feel like that might be too many steps and it can start to be a little bit overwhelming for them. The big part for me is just to get them moving, get their body a little bit more flexible and safe enough that they can do some of the movements that I'm teaching. I wanted to keep it simple, one, but the other side to it is I want to ask questions about them. I want to gauge the temperature, not just their movement temperature, like what they're capable of doing, but their life temperature. Where's their stress at? Do they feel excited to be here? Do they feel worried that we're about to start? Or are they tired from a long day? All of those things I am calculating in my mind on how I want to structure my experience for the day. If they're excited, maybe I'm going to create an excited workout. If they're really worried, I'm going to create a workout where they feel like they're safe and everything's controlled and everything's planned and I'm modifying things for them. Or if they just feel tired, maybe it's just the whole purpose of this hour is just to make them feel more energized and they feel like they're winning. The stimulus becomes more of a de-stressing stimulus instead of applying more stress. That warm-up is simple, but sometimes that warm-up is for you to warm up to see where your clients are. So I spent about 5 minutes on there. A warm-up can just be like 1 minute or 2 minutes on the bike. I'm chit-chatting with them. I'm doing maybe some hip openers and some shoulder openers, basic ones, and I'll repeat that for 2 or 3 rounds. The next step to this is activation. And for the most part, activation really comes on the later end, but I've seen so many athletes come through the doors and I almost know what parts of their body are going to be weak. And if you're watching this at 2025, chances are your client's glutes are going to be pretty weak. Their hamstrings are going to be weak. All the muscles in the back are going to be weak. So I typically add some activation movements that don't require a lot of like instruction or teaching. I could just show it, right? It could be like a hamstring hold raise or a glute bridge raise. It could just be doing like some side steps, or it could just be holding a arm plank or a shoulder tap. Whatever is going to activate some of those pieces that I think that need love, I'm going to try to activate them. And still, I'm assessing where their temperature is, both for their movement and their life. So it's giving me, I'm getting them to move, I'm getting them to sweat, but man, I'm getting like 7 or 8 or 10 minutes of really getting to a place where I'm learning about them. Because at the end of the day, the learning about them is actually going to be more important than them learning about movement. You want them to leave that first session to feel like, man, this guy knows me. For some reason, when you feel comfortable with your friends and your family, primarily because they know you, the way you can do that in a client and trainer relationship is really just asking a lot of those questions. Learn about them. How was their work? What part of the day was the hardest? What's their week like? What's their weekend like? You might not be able to ask all of those questions, but it's important to start peppering that in. You want to know your client. You want to get to a point where you know what their hobbies are. You want to know what stuff they hate in fitness and stuff they love about fitness and also outside of it. The next part to this is all about skill teaching. On the skill teaching, I want to make sure and emphasize that you're only teaching at most about 3 movements. I like just teaching 2 movements, but if you want to go and teach 3, go for it. When you are teaching these first few movements, it's important that they're very fundamental and very basic. And a lot of times you want to position it where they can possibly do the movement. I wouldn't teach a movement that is like high level at the very, very beginning. So some of the movements that I teach is like an air squat, a push-up, a strict press, a pull-up, or a ring row. Ones that require maybe like 3 steps. Like, here's what the start of the movement looks like. Here's what the bottom of the movement looks like. In between, I want it to look like this. And really break it down into 3 3 steps. There is a framework that I teach my coaches, especially when they're teaching a movement. And the 3 parts to this is you demo it first, just show them the movement. That's very valuable for a lot of people, especially for visual learners like myself. And the next part to that is you teach it. And it's important that on the teaching component that there's 3 steps. I've seen a lot of trainers try to do like 7 or 8 steps. It's just too much. If you're teaching someone to air squat, step 1 is shoot the hips back. Step 2, sit down on the floor. And then step 3 is just standing up. The final piece to the teaching component is to correct. So this is where you can add the 3rd or 4th step that you thought was an important piece to add, right? But a lot of times I feel like people are adding all of these essential steps of practical coaching cues, but the person in front of you may not have that fault. It's a lot easier to add that 4th step when they need that 4th step. Maybe they aren't hinging their hips correctly. Maybe their knees are diving in and you have to correct that. So in that case, I let them do a few reps and then I'm like, Susan, that was an awesome first set. However, there is like one thing I'd love to implement. It's going to allow you to really build your legs more effectively, because I know weight loss is a big thing for you and you want to make sure your knees are healthy. Let's try to go ahead and make sure your knees are staying out or at least aligned with your toes. Let's go see 10 more. There's a couple of things what I want to break down there. When I'm teaching something, I'm also adding value. And the way I add value is the teaching that I'm explaining to them has direct value to the goals that they told you about. If you guys want to listen to our last episode, it was all about what a consultation should look like. So you're kind of blending that in. So if Susan wants to get lean and have her legs look amazing and perform amazingly, I think it's important to attach that. There's one way where you could just like, hey, I just need you to shoot your knees out. And that might work. But if you're like, hey, I know you want like some bomb legs by the end of this. And if you want to do that, a really good way to improve this is shifting the knees out a little bit so you can squat more and you can use your legs more. And then the other side is you don't have to use big terms like their glutes and their adductors. Chill on the words. This person that's in front of you is like a CPA or a teacher. Or even doctors don't really care. Like they're not going to correct you on the muscle group. I have doctors that I train now, and what's interesting is they know nothing about their body but know a lot about another area, and they're okay with it. At least the ones that I have. So just tell them it's the leggies. That's pretty much what I use. And the other side to it is I let them do the reps, especially as they're moving for the first set. I'm not going to correct it right away. I'm going to give them 5 to 10 reps. If it's detrimental and they have something chronic that I need to fix, maybe, but that's why it's important to do those consultations. For the most part, just correct it on the second set. So that your first set, kind of sloppy, the second set, a little bit better. If you see one more thing, you then correct it on the third set. Just change one thing. You don't have to change everything. And then let them move, let them get the reps, let them build the confidence. When you change too much too early and your teaching is just overwhelming, there's 15 steps and they're just like listening to a lecture and not moving, you're actually losing your clients. I've seen trainers that are spending 20 minutes teaching an air squat. And I'm like, what are you doing? What's happening? It's 3 steps, and then get them to just do 3 sets of 10. Even when it's poor, they're getting some sort of benefit from it. And I think over time, you want to help your clients have even more and more refined air squat. But sometimes the biggest thing you can do right now for your client is just to get them to sweat and get them to feel like they're making progress. And then start peppering in some of your knowledge and your wisdom over time. So once you teach that one movement, you can teach another movement. And again, I like to use an air squat. I even like to use a strict press as some of my basic assessments to gauge maybe they have some flexibility issues or maybe they have some strength issues early on that I can start to address. And moving forward, my activation component can be a lot different. My cool down can look a lot different based on some of those mechanics. So I'm taking mental notes down. Extra credit if you grab your paper and just start writing notes. I think clients really enjoy that. I don't do that as often anymore. However, I just do it mentally. The next piece to this is the conditioning piece. Oftentimes, I made the mistake of making the conditioning piece way too long. I found that I started wiping all of my clients out early on, and they would either ask for a refund, or two, they wouldn't come back for their next session because they felt like they were defeated and they were anxious to come back in because they didn't want to die. In my initial conditioning pieces, it's less than 10 minutes, and actually I do more kind of in the 7-minute mark. If I feel that they are a little bit more conditioned, maybe I might push the 10-minute mark. However, most of the time it's actually a lot less. So 7 minutes of something that's a little bit more intense. And the goal here is to just see where their endurance is, to see where their conditioning is, and just to see like how they mentally attack some of these more gritty type of workouts. Because sometimes you'll see people just are like, I want to do one more, or they start out and they're already hyperventilating, and you have to teach them how to pace, and you have to teach them how to breath, and encourage them that it's okay to slow down in some of these conditioning pieces, because that's just part of the process. So you're gauging all of that inside that 7 minutes. Another piece to this is I try to make sure that conditioning piece, again, has less than 3 movements. I don't want to spend a majority of my session teaching. I want to spend a majority of it learning about them and also getting them to do reps. And that's the biggest thing. So an example can be like, we're going to hop on the rower for 200 meters, or you can use a bike, or you can actually jog on a treadmill, whatever item you have. So I pick one conditioning movement. The second thing is I use the movement that we just taught, like an air squat. So for instance, it could just be 10 air squats. It was like, hey, we just did 10. I think you could do 10 air squats here because I've just saw it, right? So, but if you find them struggling with 10 air squats as you're teaching it, maybe I will do like 3 or 5, or maybe I'll do an assisted version of the air squats so they're able to confidently do 10 throughout the 7 minutes. And then typically I'll add another movement, and the movement will be more of another assessment for me. It can be like a sit-up. It could be a push-up. Something, again, that I can teach in 3. We don't have to do 3 sets of 10 to figure out their stimulus for it. So relatively, it's low difficulty. And I just rinse and repeat that for 7 minutes. It sounds super simple, but guys, I'm telling you, it's extremely effective. And it's effective because, like I said, you'll see their weaknesses. You'll see how they talk to themselves. You'll see what areas of opportunity where you can be the greatest coach for them. Maybe it's learning how to pace. Maybe it's learning how to build capacity on their push-up. You're going to find stuff in there, and you just want to take conscious note. Inside this, there's not a lot of coaching. What's happening here is you're just high-fiving them. You're just like, hey, dude, you're crushing it. You're 4 minutes in, you're already at 2 rounds or 3 rounds. What you're creating there is just getting them to start building their own confidence. And the way you do that is you want to make sure you position these workout prescriptions so they have the ability to win. So make it as easy as possible, one, but not easy enough that they can just do it on their own, but easy enough that they can feel like they're being successful. So an example is like, hey, I think it's going to be really strong if you're able to do about 2 to 3 rounds. And then if they do like 4 or 5 rounds, that's when I'm like, dude, congratulations. I mean, shoot, I thought three rounds was going to be strong. You actually crushed this. We're actually in a better place to start than I realized. This is going to be fun. I'm excited to see kind of what's coming up in our next few sessions, especially if you're performing like this. This is really, really cool. The final part to this is your cool down or your mobility. In some scenarios, I might do a little bit more accessory work. However, on their first day, especially if you're spending all that time learning about them, you might not have extra time to do accessory work. And when I say accessory work, it'd be like 3 sets of 10 on the triceps or 3 sets of 10 on the hamstrings. Some little extra pieces that will build their muscle up so they can perform better in some of the more bigger movements that I typically teach as a trainer. On the mobility stuff, I always include 1 or 2 things. It's less than 5 minutes. And again, I make sure that I'm explaining the value of recovery, the value of cool down. And a lot of times, again, when I say value, you want to attach it to what their goal is. So you're teaching them how to foam roll their legs is like one of the biggest reasons why I think I've got the strongest was starting to implement some of these little things that I neglected to do for years. At the end of the workout, I'm going to show you what I want you to be doing, and we'll do it together on how to really make sure that your legs are in optimal condition so it can recover, so we can come back Wednesday strong. I'm gonna show you it. Here's what it looks like. That's kind of how I position my language, so they feel like what they're doing is exactly and fine-tuned for them. If this is extra credit, when you find imbalances and corrective things that your clients need, like they have a tight pec or a tight lat or a tight hamstring, you want to make sure that you add those into the cool down. I've seen a lot of you can just type it in YouTube and follow a proper cool down, but sometimes it doesn't address what they need as a personal client. While you can use that, it's better than most, it's important to really start thinking about some of the corrective philosophy and the certs that you've had and really start to apply that. It'll make you an entirely different trainer, because now you're fixing their movement pattern and they're able to come in regularly because they're not injured. I started implementing this in all of my training sessions. This is when you start to skill stack. Maybe some of you guys have just your CPT certs, and then you get like a recovery cert or a corrective cert. That's when you really start to become a dangerous trainer. But at the end, I'm really just starting to kind of close up the session. And the way I close up the session is I like build the plan forward. Today, I learned about your squats, and I've also learned about your sit-up strength. Tomorrow, I really want to understand kind of what your pressing strength is like. And then on the third day, we are going to implement something that's a little bit more total body. So you're building kind of what that week looks like. You want them to look forward to the next session. It's like going into watching Netflix episodes and then they have like a little teaser at the end. It's the same thing that you want to do in your client sessions. So your words and the way you position your words in that hour is so critical, especially if you want them to be coming back. Again, you want to make sure you know what your clients want to do. And the way you do that is to make sure you have the right consultation framework that we talked about in our previous episode. If you guys want to watch that, I'll leave a link down below so you guys can watch that. Just some closing thoughts. When I started running more and more first training sessions, I learned there are some big things that I wish I would have known ahead of time. Number one is most of the learning is not happening in the beginning of their sessions. Most of the learning is happening from you learning about them. So I stopped trying hard to like overcoach over time. And now I actually try hard in knowing the person in front of me as much as possible. The second thing is it's not about like trying to show them that this stuff is hard. It's actually to show them that this stuff can be easy. And that is just the nature of human beings. We want to find the thing you already are doing is hard. How can you position it to where it feels like it's winning? And it's like game theory. Most video games start out really, really easy so you can get addicted. And then over time, it gets progressively more challenging. And then you're still winning, some losing, and you're just building that with your clients. I guess if you can just foster experience where they feel like they're winning, they feel like you are knowing them and learning about them. And then the final thing is letting them know that you have a plan, a rough plan. It can be a built-out plan, but a rough plan for them to just, when they know there's a plan in place, they just feel like they're the Luke Skywalker to your Yoda. And you want them to feel like that. They're like, okay, there's a progression here. I'm gonna learn how to use a lightsaber, whatever they're trying to figure out. I'm a nerd. Don't worry about me. So, guys, if you guys like this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe. If you guys want to comment below how you guys structure your amazing client sessions, I'd love to know about them. Or if you have questions, I'm a little bit more active on my social because we're really just building this channel for the trainers. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.